On the third day after the surgery, I went to the restroom. Near the operating room, I overheard a conversation between my daughter and the hospital director. The words sliced through the slightly ajar door like knives. She already signed the estate documents. Tomorrow morning, administer the injection so she doesn't wake up, and the 25% is yours. I froze in the hallway, clutching the IV pole for support. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My own daughter, Virginia Hayes, the child I had raised alone after her father abandoned us, was negotiating my death as casually as someone buying produce at the market. But then, I heard something that made everything 1,000 times worse. The voice of Dr. Elias Thorne responded with chilling calm. "It's not the first time we've done this, Virginia. Nobody suspects anything when a 67-year-old patient doesn't wake up after surgery. We'll say there were complications." I felt the world crumble. It wasn't just my daughter's betrayal. It was a criminal scheme, a business of death they had executed before. Now, let me explain how I ended up in that hallway, right at the moment I discovered that my own flesh and blood wanted to erase me from the world. It all started 3 weeks earlier, when Virginia showed up at my house with that smile she always wore when she needed something. I was in the kitchen preparing gumbo, my hands covered in spices, the steam filling the room with the rich aroma of slow-cooked roux and spices that reminded me so much of my own mother. I'd spent the entire morning cooking because I knew Virginia loved my gumbo, and it had been 2 months since she'd bothered to visit. "Mom, you smell delicious," she said, walking in without ringing the doorbell, acting as if she still lived there. She gave me a quick hug, one of those meaningless embraces, and sat down at the table with her phone in her hand. She didn't even look me in the eye. "I made your favorite with shrimp and sausage," I told her, wiping my hands on my apron. "Want some coffee? I just brewed a fresh pot." "I don't have much time, Mom. Derek is waiting for me. I came because I need to talk to you about something important." Something important. It was always something important when Virginia came to see me. It was never just to spend time with me, to ask how I was doing, or to reminisce about the years when it was just her and me against the world. I sat across from her, drying my hands, which still smelled of bay leaf and thyme. "Tell me, baby, what do you need?" "Mom, I've been thinking about your health." Her voice sounded concerned, but her eyes remained glued to her phone screen. "You've been complaining about stomach pains for months. You need to get your gallbladder removed. I already spoke with Dr. Thorne, the director of St. Jude Regional Hospital. He's one of the best surgeons in the state, and he owes me a favor. Can you do it next week?" Next week. Everything was already decided without consulting me. "I don't know, Virginia. Surgery at my age is risky. Besides, it doesn't hurt that bad. I can manage it with my diet." "Mom, don't be stubborn. If you don't do it now, it could get worse. It could turn into something serious. Do you want me to lose my mother because of your stubbornness?" That sentence hurt more than any gallbladder pain because it sounded like she cared, like she genuinely worried about losing me. A mother always wants to believe her children love her, even when every sign says otherwise. "All right," I whispered, "if you think it's necessary." Virginia smiled, but it wasn't a smile of relief. It was a smile of victory. "Perfect. Oh, and Mom, one more thing. To be admitted to the hospital, they need some paperwork. You know, medical authorizations, insurance information, that kind of stuff. Dr. Thorne gave me these papers for you to sign." She pulled a thick folder from her purse and placed it on the table, right on top of the gumbo stains. There were many pages, small print, medical terms I didn't understand. "Shouldn't you explain what I'm signing, baby?" "They're standard hospital forms, Mom. Authorizations for the surgery, consent forms. Nothing important. Trust me." Trust me. Those 3 words a mother should never question. I signed every page where Virginia pointed her finger, without reading, without asking. I signed because I believed my daughter was looking out for me. I signed because I thought it was the right thing to do. Without knowing it, I signed my own death warrant. A week later, I was at St. Jude Regional Hospital in a private room on the 3rd floor. Virginia had insisted I needed privacy to recover properly. The room had beige walls, a window overlooking a gray parking lot, and that disinfectant smell that gets into your lungs and never leaves. Dr. Thorne came to see me the night before the surgery. He was a tall man in his 50s with perfectly combed silver hair and a smile that showed impossibly white teeth. He wore an immaculate white coat and a watch that probably cost more than my house. "Mrs. Vance, it's a pleasure to take care of you. Virginia has told me so much about you. Don't worry, the surgery is straightforward. You'll be home in less than a week." Home. How ironic that he would use that word when they had already planned that I would never return. The surgery was a Tuesday morning. I remember the ceiling of the operating room, the bright lights that looked like artificial suns, the oxygen mask covering my face, the voice of a nurse telling me to count backward from 10. I got to 7 before everything went black. I woke up with a dull ache in my abdomen and a mouth dry as paper. Virginia was sitting next to my bed, but she wasn't looking at me. She was typing messages on her phone, her perfectly painted coral nails tapping the screen urgently. "How do you feel, Mom?" she asked without looking up. "Sore. I'm so thirsty." "I'll tell the nurse to bring you water. You need to rest. Dr. Thorne says everything went perfectly." Perfectly. That word also sounded strange coming from her. The next 2 days were a haze of pain, morphine, and brief visits from Virginia that lasted exactly 15 minutes. Derek came once, stood in the doorway, asked how I was with the same enthusiasm one asks for the time, and left. None of my other relatives showed up. Virginia had told them I needed absolute rest, that visitors were prohibited. On the 3rd day, I felt a little better. The pain had lessened, and I could get up with help. I needed to go to the bathroom, but the nurse wasn't responding to the call light. I decided to go alone, dragging the IV pole. The hallway was strangely empty for mid-morning. I walked slowly. Each step was a small triumph. I passed other rooms. I heard the murmur of televisions, coughs from other patients, the soft cry of someone who had probably just received bad news. And then, as I passed close to a secluded office near the operating room, I heard Virginia's voice. I stopped. Something in her tone made me stand still, breathe slowly, and strain my ears. She already signed the estate documents. My heart began to pound. What documents? What estate? "Tomorrow morning, administer the injection so she doesn't wake up, and the 25% is yours." The world stopped spinning. The hallway began to tilt. I clung to the IV pole so hard that my knuckles turned white. "It's not the first time we've done this, Virginia. Nobody suspects anything when a 67-year-old patient doesn't wake up after surgery. We'll say there were complications." There it was, the confirmation that it wasn't paranoia. It wasn't my imagination. My daughter was planning to murder me, and the doctor I had trusted was her accomplice. My legs stopped responding. I stayed there in that empty hallway, feeling every word that came out of that office bury me a little deeper. I wanted to run, scream, break down that door and confront them, but my body was paralyzed by fear and betrayal. "Are you sure she signed everything?" Dr. Thorne asked. His voice sounded as casual as if he were discussing the lunch menu. "Completely sure. She signed the transfer of the estate, the power of attorney, everything. My lawyer already has the documents recorded. As soon as she passes, the property automatically transfers to my name." $800,000, doctor. It's a huge estate outside Atlanta with the original house included. $200,000. That was the value of my life to my own daughter. The estate my mother had left me, where Virginia had grown up, where we had planted trees together, where I had taught her to ride a bicycle, all reduced to a number in a bank account. "Derek already has interested buyers," Virginia continued. "People from New York City who want to convert it into a boutique hotel. They want to pay in cash, quick and clean." "Perfect," Thorne replied. "Then tomorrow at 6 in the morning. That's when the nursing shift change happens, fewer witnesses. I'll apply potassium chloride directly to the IV drip. It will cause an immediate cardiac arrest. It will look completely natural. I've used this method 4 times before. It never fails." 4 times before. There were others, other children, other families, other seniors murdered in this hospital, while everyone believed it was God's will or the complications of age. The director's voice sounded authoritative. "There won't be an autopsy. I'll sign the death certificate. I'll put post-operative complications. Age-related heart failure. It's what I always put. The authorities never question my word. I've been the director of this hospital for 15 years. Esmeralda was 67 and just came out of surgery. It all makes sense." I felt nauseous, not from the surgery, but from the ease with which they spoke of killing me, as if I were a formality, an obstacle between them and the money. "My brother doesn't suspect anything, right?" Virginia asked. Then I remembered I had a brother, Edward, who lived in Texas. He didn't even know I was hospitalized. "No one suspects a thing. Besides, you're the only legal heir. According to the documents she signed, your brother won't be able to claim anything." I heard the sound of a chair moving. They were getting up. They were about to come out. I panicked. If they saw me there, they would know I had heard everything. Maybe they would move the plan up. Maybe that injection would arrive tonight instead of tomorrow. I spun the IV pole desperately and began walking back toward my room as fast as my operated body would allow. Every step was agony. The surgical wound burned. I felt the stitches were going to burst, but I couldn't stop. I reached my room just as I heard the office door open. I slipped into bed, closed my eyes, and tried to control my breathing, which was coming out ragged and loud. My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it from the hallway. I heard Virginia's heels approaching. She entered my room. I lay completely still, pretending to be asleep, praying she wouldn't notice the cold sweat covering my forehead, the tremor of my hands beneath the sheets. "Still sleeping," Virginia murmured. I felt her presence near my bed. I could smell her expensive perfume, that scent of gardenia and vanilla that I had once found elegant and now made me sick. She stood there for several seconds that felt like hours. Was she thinking of doing it right now? Was she considering suffocating me with the pillow to expedite the plan? Finally, I heard her footsteps receding. The door closed softly. I opened my eyes and stared at the ceiling. Tears began to roll down my cheeks, unstoppable. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of helplessness, of a betrayal so deep it felt like my soul had been ripped out. How had I gotten here? When had my daughter become this? I remembered the nights she was sick as a child, and I stayed awake by her bed, placing cool cloths on her forehead. I remembered the times I worked 2 shifts to pay for her college because her father never sent a dime. I remembered her graduation when she hugged me and told me she owed everything she was to me. Lies. It had all been a lie. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was 11 in the morning. I had 19 hours before Dr. Thorne came in with that lethal injection. 19 hours to decide whether to stay here waiting for death or to fight. My body was weak. I had just come out of surgery. I had tubes connected, a fresh wound on my abdomen, legs that barely supported me, but I had something more important. I had the truth, and I had 19 hours. I sat up slowly in bed. Every movement was a reminder that my body was not ready for what my mind needed to do. I disconnected the oxygen monitor from my finger. An alarm immediately started to sound. A nurse came rushing in seconds later. She was young, maybe 30 years old, with her hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind eyes. Her badge read, Alana. "Mrs. Vance, are you okay? Your monitor disconnected." I stared at her, trying to read her eyes to see if she was part of the scheme, if she knew what Thorne and Virginia had planned. I needed to trust someone, but how could I know who? "I need to talk to you," I whispered. "But close the door first." Alana looked at me, confused, but she obeyed. She closed the door and approached my bed. "What is it? Are you in pain? Do you need more medication?" "I need to get out of this hospital now, tonight, and I need your help." Her eyes widened in surprise. "Ma'am, you just had surgery. You can't leave. You could have complications, an infection, internal bleeding." "If I stay here, I'm going to die, but not from medical complications. I'm going to die because my daughter and Dr. Thorne are going to murder me tomorrow morning to take my property." The words tumbled out, desperate. I expected Alana to think I was hallucinating from the medications, to call security, to sedate me and leave me there to await my fate. But she didn't. Her face changed. The surprise turned into something darker, deeper. recognition. "Tell me everything," she said in a low voice, glancing toward the door as if she feared someone might be listening. "Tell me exactly what you heard." And at that moment, I knew I had found the right person, because in her eyes, I didn't see disbelief. I saw something worse. I saw confirmation. I told her everything, every word I had heard in that hallway, the signed documents, the planned injection, the potassium chloride, the 4 previous times, the $200,000. When I finished, Alana sat in the chair beside my bed. Her hands were shaking. "My mother died in this hospital 2 years ago," she said, her voice broken. "She was 71. She came in for a simple hip surgery. Everything went well, according to Dr. Thorne, but 3 days later, she had a cardiac arrest. He said it was complications, that it was normal at her age. He signed the death certificate that same night. There was no autopsy. My sister and I never understood what happened because Mom was fine. She was recovering perfectly." She wiped tears with the back of her hand. 2 weeks later, my sister sold Mom's house, a huge house downtown. It was worth about $1 million. I never saw a dime. My sister said Mom had signed documents leaving everything to her before she died. The silence between us was heavy, charged with shared pain and rage. "Help me get out of here," I begged her. "Help me, and I'll help you find out what really happened to your mother." Alana nodded. "My shift ends at 10 tonight. There's less staff then. I'll bring you regular clothes and disconnect your IV. You'll have to walk to the staff parking lot. Do you think you can make it?" "I'll walk even if I have to crawl." The next few hours were the longest of my life. Every minute dragged by as if time itself knew I was in danger. Virginia returned at 3 in the afternoon with Derek. They entered my room with faces of such false concern that it made me want to vomit. "Mom, how do you feel?" Virginia leaned in to kiss my forehead. Her breath smelled of expensive coffee and lies. I had to use all my willpower not to pull away, not to scream in her face that I knew everything. "Tired," I murmured, keeping my eyes half closed. "It hurts a lot." "Dr. Thorne says that's normal. You'll feel better tomorrow." Derek smiled from the doorway, with his hands in his pockets, looking at his watch as always. Tomorrow. Right. Tomorrow, I wouldn't feel anything, because I would be dead. "Do you need anything, Mom?" "Want me to stay with you tonight?" Virginia asked, but she was already checking her phone again. She didn't expect me to say yes. She never expected me to say yes. "No, baby. Go rest. I'll be fine." "All right. We'll be back early tomorrow." She got up quickly, clearly relieved to be able to leave. Derek was already in the hallway. "I love you, Mom." Those words that once filled my heart now sounded hollow, rotten, like beautiful fruit on the outside but decomposed within. They left. I heard their steps receding down the hall, their voices whispering something I couldn't distinguish, and then silence. I closed my eyes, and the tears returned. I couldn't control them. I cried for the daughter I thought I had, and who never existed. I cried for all the years I spent working to give her everything. I cried for the foolish woman who had signed those documents without reading because she trusted her own flesh and blood blindly. But after the crying came the rage. And rage is much more useful than sadness. At 7 that evening, they brought dinner, watery soup that tasted like cardboard and green gelatin that looked like melted plastic. I didn't touch any of it. I needed to stay alert. I needed to conserve my strength for what was coming. Alana came in at 8 to check my vital signs. There was another nurse with her, an older woman who watched everything with suspicion. Alana didn't look me in the eye. She just did her job in silence and left. I understood the message. Not yet. We had to wait. 9 o'clock came with torturous slowness. I heard the shift change in the hallway, voices saying goodbye, hurried footsteps of people leaving. The hospital grew quieter, darker, as if it knew that terrible things happened within its walls when the world slept. At 9:30, Alana entered. She was alone this time, carrying a canvas bag. She locked the door from the inside. "We have 20 minutes," she whispered. "After that, the supervisor does rounds, and if he doesn't find you here, all the alarms will sound." She pulled a pair of gray sweatpants, a long-sleeved white shirt, and some old sneakers from the bag. "They're mine. They'll be too big for you, but it's the best I could get without raising suspicion." She helped me sit up. The pain in my abdomen was intense, like someone was twisting a knife inside me. I took a deep breath, stifled a moan, and let Alana remove my hospital gown. Seeing my body was a shock. The surgical wound was a red, swollen line covered with bandages. I had bruises everywhere from the injections and IVs. It looked like a battleground. "This is going to hurt," Alana warned as she began to disconnect the IV. She was right. The stinging as she pulled out the needle made me bite my lip until it bled, just to keep from crying out. She helped me put on the clothes. Every movement was torture. Lifting my arms to put on the shirt made me see stars. Bending down to pull up the sweatpants almost made me pass out, but I managed. I dressed as if I were putting on armor for war. "Now listen closely," Alana said as she helped me put on the sneakers. "We're going out through the service staircase. It's at the end of the hall, near the supply closet. No one uses it at this hour. We'll go down 3 flights. I'll take you to my car in the staff parking lot. It's an old white sedan. It won't attract attention. And after that, I can't go home. Virginia probably has the entrance watched. I have a friend, Rhonda. She lives alone on the outskirts of the city. She'll help us. She's trustworthy, I promise." Rhonda. That name sparked something in my memory. Rhonda Miller, the girl who lived in my neighborhood about 40 years ago. Alana nodded, surprised. "Yes, you know her." "She was my best friend when we were young. We lost touch when I got married and moved." "Fate has strange ways of bringing things full circle. She'll be happy to see you. Now, let's go. We don't have time." She helped me up from the bed. My legs were shaking like gelatin. Alana placed my arm over her shoulder and held me firmly by the waist. Clinging together like that, we walked out into the hall. The corridor was dimly lit. Only every third fluorescent light was on to save energy. Our footsteps sounded amplified in the silence. Every door we passed seemed to hide watching eyes. We reached the supply closet. Alana opened the door next to it, the service staircase. The air that rushed out smelled of dampness and neglect. These were the stairs no one used, the ones that existed only for emergencies or for cleaning staff to move their carts without bothering the patients. "Hold the railing," Alana instructed me. "We go slow, 1 step at a time." We started down. Each step was agony. I felt the stitches of my surgery stretching, that something inside me was going to snap. Sweat ran down my back. Halfway down the 2nd flight, I had to stop. "I can't," I gasped. "It hurts too much." "Yes, you can. Think of your daughter waiting for you to die tomorrow. Think of Dr. Thorne preparing that injection. Think of all the people he killed before you. Are you going to let them win?" She was right. The rage reignited, giving me strength. I kept descending step after step, floor after floor, until we finally reached the ground level. Alana carefully opened the door. We were in a service hallway near the hospital kitchen. I could smell reheated food and industrial disinfectant. There was a security guard at the end of the corridor, but he was facing away, looking at something on his phone. "Quick," Alana whispered. We crossed the hall and exited through a side door that led directly to the parking lot. The cool night air hit my face like a slap. It was October, it was cold, and I was only wearing that thin shirt. But that air meant freedom. It meant I was still alive. The parking lot was poorly lit. Shadows from trees moved in the wind, creating menacing shapes. Alana guided me between the cars until we reached a small white one with a dented rear bumper. "Get in quickly," she said, opening the passenger door. I collapsed into the seat. The pain was unbearable. Now I felt something wet on my abdomen. I looked down and saw a red stain spreading on the gray sweatpants. "I'm bleeding," I said in a trembling voice. Alana saw the stain and turned pale. "Damn it, some stitches opened. Hang on, we're going to Rhonda's. She'll know what to do." She started the car, and we left the parking lot. I looked in the side mirror and saw St. Jude Regional Hospital receding, that white building I had entered trusting they would cure me, and which was actually my planned grave. We drove in silence through empty streets. It was almost 10 at night, and the city looked like a ghost town. The streetlights flashed by, creating hypnotic patterns. I pressed my abdomen, trying to stop the bleeding, feeling my shirt soak with warm blood. "How much longer?" I asked weakly. 20 minutes. "Hold on, Esmeralda. We're almost there." 20 minutes. 20 minutes in which I could bleed out. 20 minutes in which the hospital would discover my absence. 20 minutes in which Virginia would receive the call saying her mother had escaped. I closed my eyes and tried not to think about the pain. I tried not to think about the blood. Instead, I thought about all the years I had lived being invisible, being the perfect mother, the sacrificial woman, the one who always gave and never asked for anything in return. I had spent 67 years pleasing others, putting their needs before mine, believing that was the definition of love. But love doesn't kill you. Love doesn't negotiate your death for money. Love doesn't sign your sentence with a fake smile. I opened my eyes with a new determination. I was not going to bleed to death in this car. I was not going to give Virginia the satisfaction of inheriting my estate. I was not going to let Dr. Thorne keep murdering seniors without consequences. I was going to survive, and then I was going to destroy them. The car finally stopped in front of a small house with a neglected garden. The lights were on inside. Before Alana could ring the doorbell, the door opened. A woman my age appeared on the threshold, white hair pulled back in a bun, deep wrinkles around eyes I once knew very well. I hadn't seen her in 40 years, but I recognized her immediately. "Rhonda!" My voice came out broken. She stared at me, and I saw her eyes fill with tears. "Esmeralda, my God, is that you? I need help," I whispered, before my legs gave out and everything went black. I woke up in a bed that wasn't mine, covered with sheets that smelled of lavender and fabric softener. The room was dim. Only a small lamp on the nightstand was lit. It took me a few seconds to remember where I was and why every inch of my body screamed in pain. "You're awake." Rhonda's voice came from a chair in the corner. She approached the bed with a steaming mug in her hands. "You slept for 6 hours. You passed out right at my door. You almost scared me to death." I tried to sit up, but the pain prevented it. Rhonda helped me sit, arranging pillows behind my back. Slowly, Alana patched up the wound as best she could. Some stitches opened, but we managed to stop the bleeding. It's not perfect, but it'll keep you alive. "Where is Alana?" "She had to go back to the hospital before they noticed her absence, but she'll be back tomorrow after her shift." Rhonda offered me the mug. "Drink this chamomile tea with honey. It will help with the pain." I took the cup with trembling hands. The warm liquid went down my throat like a hug from the inside. "Thank you, Rhonda. You don't know how much it means that you helped me without asking questions." "Oh, I asked plenty of questions. Alana told me everything while we were patching you up." She sat on the edge of the bed. Her face showed a mixture of anger and sadness. "Your own daughter, Esmeralda. Your own flesh and blood planning to kill you. I can't believe it." I couldn't either until I heard her words with my own ears. I took another sip of tea, feeling the warmth restore a bit of my humanity. "Do you remember when we were young and you told me my biggest flaw was trusting people too much?" Rhonda smiled sadly. "I remember, and I remember when you met that man, Virginia's father. I warned you he wasn't any good, that he only wanted your money, your estate." "You were right. He left when Virginia was 5. He took everything he could carry and never came back. I stopped talking to you after that because I was too ashamed to admit you'd been right." "We were so foolish," Rhonda sighed. "We lost 40 years of friendship over pride. We're not going to lose one day more." I extended my hand and she took it. Her fingers were wrinkled like mine, marked by time and work, but her grip was strong. "Rhonda, I need your help, not just to hide. I need to stop Virginia and Dr. Thorne. I need to make sure they don't do this to anyone else." "I know. That's why I called my son as soon as Alana left." "Your son?" "Felix is a lawyer. He specializes in elder abuse cases. He's won multi-million-dollar lawsuits against hospitals, against corrupt families, against all kinds of vultures who prey on the elderly." Pride shone in her eyes. I told him your situation. He's flying in tomorrow morning. I felt a spark of hope for the first time since I had overheard that conversation. Do you really think he can help me? Esmeralda, my son has been waiting his whole career for a case like yours. A corrupt doctor, murdering patients, a parricidal daughter, falsified documents. This isn't just your revenge. This is justice for all the people Thorne killed before you. The room door opened, and a man in his 40s entered, tall, wearing glasses, and carrying a laptop under his arm. I heard voices. Mrs. Vance, I'm Felix Miller. My mother told me your situation, and I took the first flight from New York City. We need to talk. He hadn't waited until morning. He had come in the middle of the night because he understood the urgency. He sat in the chair Rhonda had occupied and opened his laptop. First of all, are you well enough to talk? I need you to tell me everything from the beginning, every detail, every document you signed, every word you heard, everything. For the next hour, I told him my story. Felix didn't interrupt. He just took notes on his computer with swift fingers. When I mentioned the 4 previous cases Thorne had confessed to, his eyes lit up with what looked like professional hunger. That's crucial, he said. If we can prove this is a pattern, that there are more victims, the case becomes federal. It's no longer just attempted murder, it's serial murder with economic motivation. Thorne could face life in prison. But how do we prove something like that? I just overheard a conversation. I don't have recordings. I don't have physical evidence. Felix smiled. That's where my work comes in. First, we're going to recover all the documents you signed. I need to see exactly what that paperwork says. I'd bet anything it included a property transfer disguised as medical forms. But Virginia has all those documents. Not all of them. Hospitals keep copies of everything patients sign. It's the law. First thing tomorrow morning, I'm going to show up at St. Jude Regional Hospital as your legal representative and demand complete access to your medical file. They can't refuse. And if they notify Thorne, let them. In fact, I want them to notify him. I want him to know you have legal representation now. That will scare him. And scared people make mistakes. Felix closed his laptop. But there's something more important we need to do first. We need to report your disappearance from the hospital. What? No, if we do that, Virginia will know I'm alive. Exactly, and that's what we want. He leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with strategy. Think about it, Mrs. Vance. Right now, Thorne and your daughter believe you are in that hospital, asleep, waiting for the injection tomorrow morning. But if they discover you vanished, they will panic. Panic will make them act impulsively. Maybe they'll try to run. Maybe they'll start fighting among themselves. Panic leaves evidence. Rhonda nodded. Felix is right. Plus, if they don't report your disappearance, it's suspicious. A hospital loses a recently operated patient and says nothing. That makes them complicit. All right, I accepted, though the idea of Virginia knowing I was alive terrified me. What do we do? I'll call the hospital in an hour. When dawn breaks, I'll say I'm your lawyer and that my client disappeared from her room. I'll demand they review the security cameras, call the police, and initiate a search protocol, all by the book. Felix stood up. In the meantime, you need to rest. Tomorrow will be a long day. After he left, Rhonda helped me lie down again. Are you afraid? She asked as she turned off the light. I'm terrified, I admitted. But I'm also furious, and the fury is stronger than the fear. That's my Esmeralda. The brave girl I knew so long ago is still in there. I was left alone in the dark, listening to the nocturnal sounds of an unfamiliar house. Every creak made me jump. Every shadow seemed like Virginia coming to finish the job. But also, for the first time in days, I felt something akin to hope. I didn't sleep much that night. The physical pain was constant, but the emotional pain was worse. I kept reviewing every moment of Virginia's life, looking for signs I should have seen. When had she become a monster? Or had she always been like that, and I had been too blinded by maternal love to notice? I remembered when she was 12 and her pet hamster died. She cried for days. Or so I thought. Now I wondered if those tears had been real or just another performance. I remembered her wedding to Derek. I had paid for everything because they said they didn't have money. $50,000 for a 6-hour event. They didn't even include me in the important family photos. I remembered every forgotten birthday, every unreturned call, every broken promise. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them. At 6 a.m, I heard movement in the house. Rhonda brewing coffee, Felix talking softly on the phone. I got up with difficulty, every muscle protesting. I looked at myself in the small mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Pale, with deep circles under my eyes, hair disheveled. But my eyes held something new. Determination, contained rage, a thirst for justice. I dressed in clothes Rhonda had left for me, a long brown skirt and a cream long-sleeved shirt. They were a bit big, but at least they were clean and not blood-stained like the ones from last night. When I left the room, Felix was in the living room with his phone to his ear. He motioned for me to wait. Yes, I understand. A 67-year-old patient, recently operated, missing from her room. This is extremely serious. No, I don't accept excuses. I want to speak with Director Thorne immediately. I see. How convenient that he isn't available. I'll speak with the assistant director then. Yes, I'll wait. He covered the phone with his hand and whispered to me, "They are in complete panic. They say they checked your room at 6 this morning and you were gone. They've been searching the entire hospital for the last half hour." I felt a dark satisfaction imagining Thorne receiving that news. I imagined his horrified face, realizing his victim had escaped. "Yes, I'm here." Felix returned to the phone. "Assistant Director Mendez, I am attorney Felix Miller, and I represent Mrs. Esmeralda Vance. My client disappeared from your hospital under extremely suspicious circumstances. I demand immediate access to all security footage, her complete medical file, and the names of all staff who had contact with her in the last 24 hours. Furthermore, I want an explanation as to why Director Thorne is suddenly unavailable when a critical patient vanishes under his supervision." There was a long pause. I could hear a shrill female voice on the other side, though I couldn't make out the words. "I don't care about your internal policies." Felix's voice became hard as steel. "You have 2 hours to gather everything I asked for, or I will file a lawsuit, not just for medical negligence, but for possible involvement in an attempt to commit murder. And believe me, Assistant Director, when the media finds out that a private hospital lost a recently operated senior patient, your reputation will be destroyed. 2 hours." He hung up and looked at me with a fierce smile. "The game has begun." Felix's phone started ringing 20 minutes later. It was an unknown number. He put it on speaker so we could all hear. "Attorney Miller." The voice was masculine, smooth, controlled. I immediately recognized that tone. It was Dr. Thorne. "Who is calling?" "This is Dr. Thorne, Director of St. Jude Regional Hospital. I just learned about the situation with Mrs. Esmeralda Vance. I want to assure you we are doing everything possible to locate her. We have staff searching the entire hospital. We have reviewed the security cameras." "And what did you find on those cameras?" There was a pause. "Nothing conclusive yet. It appears she exited via the service staircase around 10 last night, but we lose her trail after that." "How convenient that your cameras work in some places but not in others." "Attorney Miller, I assure you there is nothing sinister here. Mrs. Vance just came out of surgery. She was likely confused by the medications. It is common in patients of her age. She is surely disoriented somewhere in the building." Felix looked at me and smiled before responding. "Dr. Thorne, I have news for you. My client is not lost. She is with me. She is perfectly oriented and has many things to say about the conversations she overheard at your hospital." The silence on the other end was deafening. I could imagine Thorne's face paling, his mind racing to calculate how much I knew, how much I had told. "I don't understand what you are referring to." His voice was tense now, the artificial smoothness gone. "I think you do understand. But don't worry. Everything will be clear soon, especially when I present the recordings my client made of certain compromising conversations." There were no recordings. It was a complete bluff, but it worked. "Wait, attorney. Perhaps we can resolve this civilly. If Mrs. Vance has any complaints about her treatment, we can discuss it. I am sure there has been a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" Felix repeated with sarcasm. "That's an interesting way to refer to a plan to commit murder for money. That is a very serious, unfounded accusation. I could sue you for defamation." "Try it. In the meantime, I have an appointment with the federal prosecutor in 2 hours to file a formal complaint. I will be handing over all the information about your little business arrangement with my client's daughter and about the other 4 cases you mentioned in your conversation." Another silence. This one was longer, heavier. When Thorne spoke again, his voice had completely changed. He was no longer pretending. Now he sounded dangerous. "Attorney, you are making a very big mistake. You are interfering in matters you don't understand. There are powerful people involved in this, people who don't like when others meddle in their business." "Are you threatening me, doctor?" "I am advising you to be prudent for your own good and for your clients." "Thank you for the advice. It will be useful when I play it back for the judge. This call is being recorded, by the way." The sound of the call abruptly cutting off echoed in the living room. Rhonda had her hands over her mouth, her eyes huge. "My God, he just openly threatened you." "I know, and it's perfect." Felix put away his phone. Desperate people make mistakes. Thorne just confirmed he has something to hide. An innocent man doesn't threaten. An innocent man defends himself with facts. My own phone, which had been turned off since I escaped the hospital, began to vibrate on the table where Rhonda had left it charging. Felix motioned for me not to touch it. "Let it ring. Let's see who's calling." It was Virginia. She called 5 times in a row. Then text messages started coming in, which Felix read aloud. "Mom, where are you? I'm so worried. The hospital says you disappeared. Please answer. Mom, if you're upset about something, we can talk it out. Just tell me where you are. This isn't funny. You're sick. You need medical care. Derek and I are looking all over for you. Please, Mom." And finally, "If you don't answer, I'm going to call the police and report you as a missing person." "Respond to her," Felix instructed. "But only this. I am fine. I have a lawyer. Do not look for me." With trembling hands, I typed exactly those words and sent them. Virginia's response arrived in seconds. "A lawyer? Why do you need a lawyer?" "Mom, you're scaring me. What did they tell you? Who put ideas in your head?" I didn't reply. Felix instructed me to turn off the phone again. "Perfect. Now she knows you are conscious and protected. That will force her hand. She'll probably call Thorne. They will argue. Maybe they'll fight. And when people fight, they say things they shouldn't." "And what do we do now?" I asked. "Now we go to the police, but not the local station. We go directly to the federal prosecutor's office. I have contacts there. People who take crimes against the elderly seriously." He stood up and began putting his laptop away. "Mrs. Vance, I need you to be ready. They're going to ask you many questions. They'll want every detail. You're going to have to relive that entire conversation you overheard." "I'm ready." "I also need you to understand something important. Once we file this complaint, there is no going back. Your daughter is going to be arrested. She will face criminal charges. Her life as she knows it will end. Are you absolutely sure you want to do this?" I thought of baby Virginia, of little Virginia, of all the moments I had believed we were truly mother and daughter. I thought of the pain of betraying your own blood. But then I thought of Virginia, standing in that office, negotiating my death with the coldness of someone buying an appliance. I thought of the other 4 victims Thorne had mentioned. I thought of all the mothers, fathers, and grandparents who had died in that hospital, believing it was God's will when in reality it was murder for money. I am completely sure. She stopped being my daughter when she decided to kill me. Now she is just a criminal who needs to pay for what she did. Felix nodded in approval. "Then let's go. Rhonda, you can stay here in case anyone comes looking for Esmeralda." "Of course. I have a baseball bat under my bed, and I'm not afraid to use it." We left the house through the back door toward where Felix had parked his rented car. It was a gray sedan, discreet, perfect for not drawing attention. He helped me get in. Every movement was still painful, but the anger gave me strength I didn't know I had. As we drove toward the city, I looked out the window at the streets I had known all my life. My neighborhood, the bakery where I bought sweet rolls on Sundays, the park where Virginia played as a child. Everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. "What are you thinking about?" Felix asked. "That I spent 67 years trying to be good, trying to be the perfect mother, the woman who never causes trouble, who always forgives, who always understands. And the only thing I got was my own daughter thinking she could kill me without consequence. It wasn't your fault. I know, but it still hurts. It hurts to know that being good doesn't protect you, that loving doesn't guarantee you'll be loved back." We arrived at a large building downtown. "Federal Offices," the sign read. Felix helped me down, and we entered through thick glass doors that opened with an access card. "I have an appointment with Prosecutor David Reyes," Felix told the receptionist. We were ushered into an office on the 5th floor. Prosecutor Reyes was a man in his 50s in an impeccable suit and a serious expression. He shook our hands and invited us to sit. "Felix gave me some advance information about your case by phone, Mrs. Vance, but I need to hear everything from you directly, from the beginning, omitting nothing." And so, for the third time in 24 hours, I told my story, but this time it was different. This time it wasn't just a venting, it was an official statement. It was the beginning of the end for Virginia and Thorne. Prosecutor Reyes listened to my complete story without interruption. He took notes in a yellow pad, his expression growing more severe with every detail I revealed. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and exhaled deeply. "Mrs. Vance, what you are describing is much more serious than I imagined. We are not talking about just an attempted murder. We are talking about a criminal organization operating within a private hospital." He got up and began pacing his office. "If Dr. Thorne truly confessed to having done this 4 times before, we need to identify those victims. We need to exhume bodies, review death certificates, investigate suspicious property transfers." "How long will all that take?" Felix asked. "Months? Maybe years for a complete case, but I can get immediate arrest warrants based on Mrs. Vance's testimony and the phone threats Thorne made to you this morning." Reyes sat down again. "The problem is we need more evidence for the charges to stick. Testimony alone isn't enough. We need something concrete." "The documents I signed," I said. "Virginia said they were already recorded, that as soon as I died, the property would automatically transfer to her name." "Exactly. Those documents are key." Reyes picked up his phone. "I'm sending investigators to the Public Property Registry right now. If those papers exist, we'll find them. I will also get a warrant to review all bank accounts for Virginia, Derek, and Dr. Thorne. Money movements always leave a trail." "What about the other cases?" I asked. "The other 4 people Thorne mentioned. Their families deserve to know the truth." "You are right. I will request access to all death records at St. Jude Regional Hospital for the past 5 years. We will look for patterns. Elderly patients, simple surgeries, unexpected deaths, immediate property transfers after death. If we find even 2 cases similar to yours, we can prove this is a systemic pattern." Felix leaned forward. "Prosecutor, in the meantime, my client is in danger. Thorne and Virginia know she is alive and talking. I don't think they'll stay put waiting to be arrested." "I agree, Mrs. Vance. I need to place you under witness protection until we arrest the suspects." Witness protection? What did that mean? "It means federal agents will guard you 24 hours a day. You will stay in a safe house. You won't be able to contact anyone outside the investigation circle. You won't be able to leave without an escort. It will be uncomfortable, but necessary." The idea of being locked up, hidden like a criminal when I was the victim, churned my stomach. But I knew he was right. Virginia had shown she was capable of anything for money. She wouldn't hesitate to finish the job if she had the chance. For how long? Hopefully only a few days. I'm going to move this fast. I have enough to get arrest warrants signed this very afternoon. Reyes pressed a button on his phone. "Marta, connect me to Judge Fernandez. I need urgent arrest warrants." The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of activity. More agents arrived, took my official statement on video, and photographed my surgical wounds as evidence of the medical procedure. They had me sign dozens of documents I barely read, trusting Felix to review every word. By mid-afternoon, 2 federal agents, a young woman and a young man, both in dark suits, escorted me to an unmarked car. Rhonda had brought a suitcase with clothes for me, and I said goodbye to her with a long embrace. "You're going to be okay," she whispered in my ear. "You are stronger than you think." "Thank you for everything, Rhonda, for taking me in, for believing me, for not abandoning me." "We've been friends since we were 10, Esmeralda. 40 years of not talking doesn't change that. I would never abandon you." The safe house turned out to be a small apartment in an anonymous building on the outskirts of the city. 2 bedrooms, a basic kitchen, and windows with thick curtains that had to remain closed all the time. Agents took turns guarding the door, one inside and one in the hallway. That first night in the safe house, I couldn't sleep. Every sound made me jump. Every shadow seemed like Virginia coming for me. I sat on the sofa staring at the ceiling, thinking about how my life had completely changed in less than a week. 8 days ago, I was just an elderly woman living quietly in my house, cooking gumbo, watching television, waiting for calls from a daughter who rarely called. Now I was a protected witness in a federal criminal case, my own blood facing charges of attempted murder. My phone, which the agents had reviewed and approved, vibrated with a message. It was Felix. Good news. We found the documents at the registry. Just as we suspected, Virginia registered a property transfer upon death. The papers you signed were not medical forms. They were legal patrimonial transfer documents. This proves premeditation. We also found 3 similar cases at the hospital in the last 4 years: elderly patients, simple surgeries, sudden deaths, immediate property transfers. The arrest warrants are signed. Tomorrow at dawn, Virginia, Derek, and Thorne will be arrested simultaneously. I read the message 3 times. Tomorrow. Tomorrow my daughter would be arrested. Tomorrow the world would know she had tried to murder her own mother over a property. I should have felt victorious. I should have felt relieved. But all I felt was a massive void where my mother's heart had once been. I replied, "Thank you, Felix, for everything." "Rest, Mrs. Vance. Your justice begins tomorrow." But I didn't rest. I stayed awake all night imagining the moment of the arrest. Would Virginia scream, cry, try to deny everything, or would she finally show her true face without masks? At 5 in the morning, one of the agents brought me coffee. "Prosecutor Reyes authorized you to watch the news if you wish. The arrests will begin in an hour. It will likely be on every channel." I turned on the television and waited. The morning news showed the weather, traffic, and unimportant stories. And then, at 6:30 in the morning, the screen switched to a special alert. Federal operation at private hospital. Director arrested for patient murders. My heart pounded faster. There was St. Jude Regional Hospital on the screen, surrounded by police cars with flashing lights, federal agents entering in formation, and then the image I had been waiting for and dreading at the same time. Dr. Thorne being led out of the hospital in handcuffs, his white coat now wrinkled and stained, his face of panic captured by dozens of cameras. He was no longer the elegant man with the perfect smile. He was a criminal being displayed to the world. Dr. Elias Thorne, director of St. Jude Regional Hospital, was arrested this morning accused of multiple murders of elderly patients for economic gain. According to prosecutor sources, he operated a criminal network that included relatives of the victims. The image then changed to another scene. A house in a neighborhood I recognized, Virginia's house, agents knocking on the door, Derek opening it in his pajamas, confused, and then Virginia appearing behind him, and her face when she saw the handcuffs. That face will be etched in my memory forever. It wasn't fear, it wasn't surprise, it was pure rage. Rage that her plan had failed, rage that she had been discovered. She yelled something the cameras didn't clearly catch, but I knew what she was saying. She was cursing. She was blaming me. Even in her moment of defeat, I was the villain of her story. I watched the arrests repeated on every news channel. Each station had a different angle. but the story was the same. A respectable hospital turned into the scene of murders for money, a daughter who tried to kill her mother, a doctor who betrayed his Hippocratic oath. My name didn't appear in the initial news. Prosecutor Reyes had protected me, referring to me only as the surviving victim who exposed the criminal network, but I knew it was only a matter of time before my identity was revealed. In small cities like ours, secrets didn't last long. Felix arrived at the apartment that afternoon with a tired smile and a thick folder under his arm. "We got more than we expected," he said, slumping onto the sofa. When they arrested Thorne, he tried to negotiate. He offered to provide information about other cases in exchange for a reduced sentence. And what did he say? He confirmed the 4 previous cases. He gave us names, dates, amounts. He even kept records. Can you believe it? He had a hidden ledger in his office with all the details, amounts he received, properties transferred, methods used. The man is a sociopath, but he's also meticulous. Why would someone keep evidence of their own crimes? Ego, control, or perhaps as insurance in case his partners tried to betray him? Felix opened the folder. Here are the confirmed victims. Mr. Esteban Vargas, 72, died after hip surgery. His niece inherited a house valued at $500,000. Mrs. Amalia Reyes, 70. I stopped him. You said Amalia Reyes? Yes? Do you know her? She's the mother of the nurse who helped me escape. Alana told me her mother had died in that hospital and that she always suspected something wasn't right. Felix closed his eyes, processing the information. Then, Nurse Alana not only saved you, she used you to avenge her own mother. Brilliant and understandable. Where is she now? They arrested her too, didn't they? No, she cooperated with the investigation from the beginning. In fact, she went to the prosecutor with additional information about irregularities at the hospital. She's being treated as a protected witness, just like you. I felt relieved. Alana didn't deserve to be punished for helping me. She had lost her mother to the same greed that almost killed me. And Virginia? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted to know the answer. What did she say when they arrested her? Felix hesitated. Are you sure you want to know? I need to know. She denied everything. She said you were senile, that you were making up stories, that the documents you signed were legitimate, and that you knew exactly what you were signing. She blamed Dr. Thorne for manipulating her. She said he convinced her that you wanted to die, that you were suffering, and that it was an act of mercy. The words hit me like punches. Even now, trapped, exposed, Virginia continued to deny her guilt. She kept trying to paint me as the crazy one, the confused one, the liar. And Derek? He broke down in the first hour of interrogation. He confessed everything. He said Virginia planned everything months ago, that she was the one who contacted Thorne, who investigated his previous cases, who convinced him to include her in the next scheme. Derek says he only followed orders, that he was afraid of Virginia. Afraid of Virginia. Apparently my daughter had a temper she kept hidden. Derek showed photos of bruises, threatening messages. He said she controlled all the money, all the decisions, that if he didn't cooperate, she would leave him with nothing. A twisted part of me felt something close to satisfaction. Virginia had spent years making me feel small, insignificant, dramatic. Now the world saw who she really was. The trial will be in 3 months, Felix continued. Thorne has already pleaded guilty in exchange for testifying against Virginia. Derek will also cooperate with his testimony. With yours, plus the documentary evidence, Virginia faces between 25 and 30 years in prison. 30 years. My daughter would spend the rest of her useful life in a cell. I should have felt victorious. Instead, I only felt tired. The following days were strange. I lived in that small apartment, protected but a prisoner. Rhonda visited me twice a week, always escorted by agents. She brought me home-cooked food, magazines, and neighborhood gossip that no longer interested me. People are talking, she told me on one of her visits. Some say you're brave, others say a mother should never put her daughter in jail no matter what she did. And what do you think? I think you did what you had to do, And I think the people criticizing you weren't in that hallway, listening to their own daughter negotiate their death. Social media exploded when my name finally came out in the news. There were two clearly divided camps. Some called me a hero, a survivor, an example of strength. Others called me a traitor, an unnatural mother, a bitter old woman making up stories for attention. Virginia had managed to get some reporters to publish her version. "Senile mother falsely accuses loving daughter," read one headline. "Family misunderstanding ends in legal tragedy," read another. Felix warned me not to read the comments, but I couldn't help it. I needed to know what people were saying, how they saw me. Mothers always exaggerate. Surely the daughter just wanted to help. Old people forget things. She probably signed everything voluntarily and now doesn't remember. How sad that a family is destroyed over money. They should forgive each other and move on. Every ignorant comment infuriated me more. Forgive, move on, as if planning a murder was a disagreement over where to spend Thanksgiving. But there were also other messages. Hundreds, thousands of women sharing their own stories. Daughters who had stolen from their mothers, sons who had abandoned their parents in horrible nursing homes, families destroyed by inheritance, by greed, by lack of genuine love. "Thank you for being brave," one woman wrote. "My sister tried something similar with my father. I didn't have the courage to report her. He died believing his daughter loved him. You saved lives," wrote another. "If you hadn't spoken up, Thorne would still be killing seniors without consequence." Those messages gave me strength. They reminded me why I had agreed to testify despite the pain, despite the public shame, despite knowing I would lose my daughter forever. I hadn't really lost her. I never had her. The Virginia I loved, the one that existed in my memories and hopes, was never real. She was an illusion I had created because I needed to believe my sacrifice had been worthwhile. A month after the arrests, Felix came with unexpected news. "The families of the other victims want to meet you, specifically Nurse Alana and her siblings. Would you feel comfortable meeting with them?" The meeting was organized in the prosecutor's offices. It was a neutral, secure space with enough privacy to share grief without spectators. Alana arrived with two other people, a man in his 40s who introduced himself as her younger brother, and an older woman who turned out to be her aunt. Everyone's eyes were red from crying. "Mrs. Vance," Alana hugged me tightly. "Thank you. Thank you for having the courage I didn't have. You saved my life, Alana. I should be thanking you. When my mother died, I knew something was wrong. I felt it in my bones, but I had no proof. I had no way to prove it. My sister had manipulated everything perfectly." Her tears flowed freely. "I spent 2 years hating myself for not doing anything, and then you arrived, and I heard your story, and I knew God was giving me a second chance." Her brother spoke. "So, our older sister, the one who inherited everything, fled the country when the arrests were announced. She's somewhere in Europe spending Mom's house money, but at least now we know the truth. We know Mom didn't die of natural causes. She was murdered, and even though we can't bring her back, we can honor her memory by making sure Thorne pays." The 3 months until the trial passed in a strange haze of legal preparations and therapy. Prosecutor Reyes insisted I see a psychologist specializing in family trauma. At first I resisted. I wasn't crazy. I didn't need therapy. But Felix convinced me. "It's not because you're crazy, Esmeralda. It's because no human being should process what you lived through alone. You need help to heal." The doctor's name was Patricia. She was a woman in her 50s with a soft voice and infinite patience. In our first session, I just cried. I cried for 2 hours non-stop, releasing decades of pain I had kept hidden, pretending to be strong. "Tell me about Virginia when she was a child," Patricia asked in the 3rd session, and so I began to excavate memories I had conveniently buried. I remembered things I had forgotten, like when Virginia was 8 and drowned the neighbor's cat because it meowed too much. I had excused it as a childhood accident. Or when she was 15 and stole money from my wallet. And when I confronted her, she made me feel guilty for not trusting her. Or when she turned 21 and asked me to co-sign a loan she never paid, ruining my credit. The signs were always there. I just didn't want to see them because accepting it meant admitting I had failed as a mother. "You didn't fail," Patricia told me firmly. "Virginia was born with something broken inside. Some people simply lack empathy. You can be the best mother in the world and still raise someone incapable of genuine love. It's not your fault." Those words freed me from a guilt I had unknowingly carried. It wasn't my fault. I had done the best I could with what I had. The rest was Virginia's responsibility. Meanwhile, the case grew. Prosecutor Reyes discovered 2 additional victims, bringing the total to 7 seniors murdered in 5 years. Every family had the same story: simple surgery, unexpected death, rapid property transfer, Dr. Thorne signing the certificate without autopsies. The hospital faced multi-million-dollar lawsuits. Several staff members were fired for negligence. The board of directors resigned en masse. St. Jude Regional Hospital, which had been a respected institution for 30 years, was now synonymous with corruption and death. 2 weeks before the trial, I received a letter. It came from the prison where Virginia was awaiting trial. Felix handed it to me with a serious expression. "You don't have to read it if you don't want to." But I needed to read it. I needed to see if she would finally show some remorse, some humanity. I opened the envelope with trembling hands. The handwriting was Virginia's, that perfect penmanship I had taught her when she was 6. "Mom, I hope you're proud of yourself. You destroyed our family over a misunderstanding. All I did was think about your future, making sure you didn't end up alone and abandoned in a horrible nursing home. But you, in your senile paranoia, misinterpreted my intentions, hired expensive lawyers, publicly humiliated me, took everything from me. Now I'm in prison while you play the victim in front of the cameras. I hope you can live with that guilt. I hope that when you are truly dying alone because you no longer have family, you remember this moment and regret it. Your daughter who once loved you, Virginia." I read the letter 3 times, looking for even one word of apology, one recognition of what she had done. There was nothing, only manipulation, gaslighting until the end, trying to make me feel guilty for surviving. "What does it say?" Felix asked. "It says she's still the same person who negotiated my death. It says she hasn't learned anything." I tore the letter into small pieces. It confirms I made the right decision. The day of the trial arrived under a gray sky that threatened rain. I dressed in a dark gray suit that Rhonda had helped me choose. Nothing flashy, nothing dramatic, just an elderly woman seeking justice. The courtroom was packed. I recognized relatives of the other victims, journalists with cameras, and curiosity seekers who wanted to see the spectacle. And there, at the defense table, was Virginia. She was dressed in a pale pink dress, her hair pulled back in a low ponytail, minimal makeup. She looked young, vulnerable, and innocent. It was a calculated performance to generate sympathy. Our eyes met for a second. I expected to see hatred in her eyes, or at least rage, but what I saw was worse: indifference. She looked at me as one looks at a stranger on the street, as if I were irrelevant. The judge entered, and we all stood. He was an older man in his 70s with a severe expression. He sat down, and the process began. Prosecutor Reyes presented the case with surgical precision. He showed the falsified documents, the bank transfers, and the testimonies of Thorne and Derrick. He projected onto large screens the conversations Virginia had with Thorne, reconstructed from phone records and recovered emails. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Reyes said with a firm voice, "this is not a case of family misunderstanding. This is not a worried daughter making difficult decisions for her sick mother. This is premeditated murder, motivated by greed. Virginia Hayes planned, organized, and nearly executed the murder of her own mother for a property valued at $800,000. And when her plan failed, she showed no remorse. She showed rage at being discovered." When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand with trembling legs. I swore to tell the truth on a Bible that weighed more than I expected. The prosecutor guided me through my story. Every question was a wound opening again. I described the surgery, the hallway, and the exact words I had heard. My voice broke several times, but I didn't cry. I wouldn't give Virginia the satisfaction of seeing me weak. "Mrs. Vance," Reyes said, "do you have any doubt that your daughter planned to kill you?" "No doubt." "And how do you feel about it?" The question took me by surprise. I looked at Virginia, who watched me expressionless. "I feel betrayed. I feel furious. But most of all, I feel free. Free from the illusion that I once had a daughter who loved me. The truth hurts, but the lie hurts more." Virginia's lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit, tried to discredit me during cross-examination. He suggested my post-operative medications had caused hallucinations. He suggested my age made me unreliable. He suggested I had misinterpreted an innocent conversation. "Mrs. Vance, isn't it true that you voluntarily signed the transfer documents?" "I signed what my daughter told me were medical forms. She lied to me." "Or perhaps you didn't read carefully, and now you seek to blame someone else." "I read with the trust of a mother who believes in her daughter. That was my only mistake." "Isn't it possible that the conversation you claim to have overheard was about something completely different? That your mind, affected by the trauma of the surgery, created a narrative that didn't exist?" I leaned toward the microphone. "Young man, I heard my daughter offer $200,000 to Dr. Thorne to inject me with potassium chloride while I slept. I heard the doctor confirm he had done it 4 times before. I was not hallucinating. I was not confused. I was lucid and terrified. And your client knows exactly what she said because Dr. Thorne has already confirmed everything under oath." The lawyer had no response to that. The trial lasted 2 weeks. Testimonies, evidence, arguments. The families of the other victims also testified, each story more heartbreaking than the last. Finally, the jury retired to deliberate. We were told it could take days. It took 4 hours. When they returned, their faces said it all. On the charge of attempted murder in the first degree, how does the jury find the defendant? Guilty. On the charge of conspiracy to commit murder, how does the jury find the defendant? Guilty. Guilty on all counts. 30 years in prison without the possibility of parole for 25 years. Virginia didn't react. She remained seated, staring ahead as if this were happening to someone else. Even in her defeat, she showed no real emotion. But I did react. I cried, not from sadness, but from relief. Justice. Finally, justice. 6 months after the trial, I was finally able to return to my house. The estate Virginia had tried to steal was now completely mine again, with legal documents no one could question. But when I crossed the threshold, I didn't feel the relief I expected. The house was full of ghosts, of memories of a life that no longer existed. Rhonda helped me clean, to remove Virginia's things that were still in her old room. Photos, clothes, school trophies. Everything went into boxes that I donated without a second glance. I didn't need reminders of a person who was never real. "What are you going to do now?" Rhonda asked me as we drank coffee in the kitchen, which had once been filled with the aroma of gumbo. "Live," I simply replied. "For the first time in 67 years, I'm going to live for myself." And so I did. I sold part of the estate, the most remote part that only accumulated weeds and bitter memories. With that money, I did 3 things I had never allowed myself to do. First, I created a legal fund for elderly victims of family abuse. Together with the families of Thorne's other victims, we established a foundation that offered free legal representation to seniors being manipulated or robbed by their own children. We named it the Esmeralda Legacy Foundation, and in the first 6 months we helped 27 people reclaim their property and dignity. Second, I fulfilled the dream I had had since childhood, but always postponed due to responsibilities. Travel. I bought a plane ticket to Europe and spent 3 months touring Spain, France, and Italy. I walked ancient streets, ate food I couldn't pronounce. I sat in cafes watching life go by for the first time. No one needed anything from me. I was gloriously free. In Rome, I met a group of women my age, all traveling alone for different reasons. Divorces, widowhood, ungrateful children. We became instant friends, sharing stories and wine on terraces overlooking the Colosseum. One of them, a Spanish woman named Mercedes, told me something I will never forget. We spend the first half of our lives being what others expect. The second half is for being who we truly are. She was right. I had spent 67 years being the good mother, the obedient wife, the woman who never caused trouble. The later years would be different. Third, when I returned home, I transformed part of the estate into a shelter for older women escaping situations of abuse. Not a nursing home, but a temporary home where they could recover, receive legal counsel, and plan their next steps. I hired Alana, the nurse who had saved me, as the medical coordinator. This is what Mom would have wanted, Alana told me the day we opened the shelter, that her death would have meaning, that it would save others. The shelter was called Renaissance House, and the demand was immediate. There were so many trapped women, so many stories like mine. They arrived scared, broken, convinced they deserved the mistreatment. They left strong, informed, ready to reclaim their lives. One afternoon, a year after the trial, I received a letter. I didn't recognize the handwriting, but the sender said Federal Women's Prison. For a moment, I thought it was from Virginia, but the name was different, Derek Hayes. I hesitated to open it, but curiosity won. Mrs. Vance, I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I did. I accepted my 15-year sentence, and every day I carry the guilt of being an accomplice. But I need you to know something. Virginia manipulated me as much as she manipulated you. I was her puppet. I lived terrified of contradicting her. That doesn't excuse me, but it is the truth. I testified against her, not out of revenge, but because I finally had the courage to tell the truth. I will never expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that what you did, turning us all in, saved more lives than you can imagine. There are 3 people in this prison who are also here for planning to kill their elderly parents. Your case opened an investigation that caught them. You are a hero, even if you don't feel like one. With respect, Derek. I folded the letter and put it away. I didn't forgive Derek, but I understood that he, too, had been a victim in his own way. Virginia had that talent, turning everyone around her into accomplices or victims. The media remained interested in my story. I declined most interviews, but I accepted one with a program about female survivors. The interviewer asked me something no one else had dared to. Do you ever miss her? Do you miss your daughter? I thought long and hard before answering. I miss the daughter I thought I had. I miss the illusion. But the real person, Virginia, I don't miss her because that person never loved me. And you can't miss what you never had. Has she written? Have you spoken since the trial? She wrote me once, blaming me for everything. I never responded. I have nothing to say to her. She made her choices, I made mine. We are nothing to each other anymore. If you could tell other women in similar situations anything, what would it be? That blood doesn't mean loyalty. That being a mother doesn't mean accepting abuse. That it's okay to walk away from toxic people, even if they are family. That surviving is not selfish. It's necessary. And that life after betrayal can be beautiful if you have the courage to rebuild it. 2 years later, on my 70th birthday, I hosted a party on the estate. Not a small, quiet celebration like the ones I had before. I invited all the women who had passed through Renaissance House, the families of Thorne's victims, Felix and his family, and Rhonda and her children. There were over 100 people in my garden eating, laughing, and celebrating life. Alana gave me a gift, a photo album of all the women we had helped. Each page had a photo and a message of gratitude. Tears streamed down my cheeks as I flipped through it. Thank you for teaching me I'm not crazy. Thank you for giving me courage. Thank you for proving we can start over. See, Alana said, your pain was not in vain. You saved all these lives. That night, after everyone had gone, I sat alone on the porch looking at the stars. I thought about the entire journey since that hospital hallway, where I heard the words that changed my life, from the terror of that night to the peace of this moment. It hadn't been easy. There were nights of crying, days of doubt, moments when I questioned whether it was worth destroying my own daughter. But then I remembered that she was already destroyed inside. I only exposed the truth, and the truth, though painful, had set me free. I looked at my reflection in the window, a 70-year-old woman with wrinkles earned through experience, silver hair I no longer tried to color, and tired but peaceful eyes. I was not the woman who had entered that hospital 2 years ago. That woman had died in that hallway. This woman was new, reborn, free. And this woman was finally ready to live every day she had left on her own terms, without guilt, without apologies, without fear, because I had survived the worst a mother can face. And if I survived that, I could survive anything. The rest of my life would be mine, and mine alone. And that, I discovered, was the best gift I had ever given myself. The story of how my daughter tried to kill me had become the story of how I finally learned to live. And if anything good came out of all that darkness, it was this. I inspired other women to reclaim their lives too, one by one. We were rewriting the rules. We were no longer the silent women who accepted everything to keep the peace. We were warriors, survivors, phoenixes rising from the ashes. And I, Esmeralda Vance, 67 years old when I almost died, and now 70 years of full life, was living proof that it is never too late to start over. It is never too late to choose yourself. It is never too late to be free. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.